U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is meeting with China's President Xi Jinping on the final day of his visit to Beijing. This comes as both countries are looking to stop tensions over a number of issues from escalating into all-out conflict. Antony Blinken began his second and final day of talks by meeting China's top diplomat Wang Yi. But following those discussions, Yi accused the U.S. of having the, quote, wrong perception of China, adding that Washington would have to choose between cooperation or conflict. Let's go straight over to Beijing, where journalist Fabian Kretschmer is covering this story for us. Fabian, the U.S. Secretary of State is meeting President Xi Jinping. After all, is this an indication that relations may be improving?
Well, it's definitely a good sign. That's a signal that the international community has been hoping for. And it will be the climax of Blinken's visit in Beijing. Just when you look at the diplomatic protocol, it's a rare sign for Xi Jinping to meet a foreign minister. But it shows, first of all, how important the US-China relationships are for the head of state, for Xi Jinping. And by the first handout that I could read, it was very brief, but it mentioned that Xi Jinping hoped for a stabilization of the bilateral relationship between the two countries. So it's a cautious first good sign, but I wouldn't draw too many conclusions by now. I think we should wait a little bit more until we know more details what was actually talked during the meeting.
Earlier, Chinese state media reported that Foreign Minister Wang Yi said that the U.S. needs to, quote, make a choice between dialogue and confrontation, cooperation or conflict. What do you make of that, Fabian?
Well, this rhetoric is really alarming because it does not leave any room for finding a diplomatic middle ground or finding any kind of compromise. Wang Yi basically laid the blame only on the U.S. side. He said that the U.S. should, quote-unquote, deeply reflect. He also said that, the U.S. has a wrong perception of China, and that is the root cause for this historic low point in diplomatic relation. So there's not really much to talk to when you say that basically on the major issues, also as Taiwan, there's no room for compromise. That is basically the official position of Wang Yi, who proved to be quite a diplomatic wolf warrior, quite hawkish in its stance.
Well, you mentioned Taiwan. Much of the tension between China and the U.S. focuses on that democratically governed island, which China regards as a renegade province. Is that likely, Taiwan, likely to be a topic of discussion in the meeting between Antony Blinken and Xi Jinping?
Well, at least indirectly. I mean, Taiwan holds the potential to escalate into an open war, basically. So that's why this is really the core interest that the two sides should manage, because it's really very dangerous. It holds the potential of escalating into a war. I think what both sides during the meeting between Xi and Blinken will focus on is how they can manage to avoid any escalation, how they can stop this negative spiral. And I would say at least it's a first sign that both sides have met, and for sure I think the US side will ask Xi Jinping also to meet with President Biden, because he has previously voiced some interest to do so.
Fabian, thank you very much. That was journalist Fabian Kretschmer in Beijing.